We have everyone, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We have. Okay, well, let's start. Welcome all to this edition of our virtual Advisory Planning Commission. And as we always do, we start with a little verbiage. Pursuant to the March 26, 2020 Ministerial Order number M083, members of the APC may participate in this meeting utilizing electronic or other communication facilities, and members of the public will not be allowed to attend this meeting. After this meeting, an audio recording will be made available to the public in lieu of attendance at the live meeting. The recording will be available on the town's website until such time as the application or issue is no longer under consideration by council, at which point the recording will be deleted. The APC makes recommendations to council on matters respecting land use, community planning, or related bylaws and permits, as referred by council or the Director of Planning. The APC is advisory and does not have any direct approval, ownership, or authority over matters that are referred to it. Council may or may not adopt the recommendations made by this commission. The following will be the sequence for each item on the agenda: a short introduction to the application from town staff, presentation by the applicant, questions to the applicant, APC discussion, motions. And to ensure that the meeting is productive and respectful, we ask that applicants only speak in response to questions. So we'll move to the agenda. And I would ask for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. You could call out your name.
Susan.
Susan, seconded by?
Dawn.
Dawn, thank you. Discussion? Being none, call the question. Those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed, if any? Carried. Approval of the minutes. I'd receive a motion to approve the minutes as has been presented from our July 22nd meeting. Moved by?
Petronella.
Thank you, Petronella.
One of us.
Second, Mark. Great.
Sure.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed, if any? Carried. Business arising from the minutes? Hearing none, we'll move to our new business, which is an application for a zoning amendment at 545 Nezel Road. We'll start with an introduction to the application by Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The owner of 545 Nezel Road has made an application for a zoning amendment to change the zone from Rural 3, A1, to Rural 4, A4, for the purpose of permitting 6 rural rental cottages. The current zoning on the property permits 2 single-family dwellings and 2 garden suites or secondary suites, so a total of 4 dwelling units. The new zone would permit a total of 10. This new A4 zone is a new zone which was created for this application, and it actually takes advantage of a new zoning technique that was introduced by the province a few years ago, where the province enabled municipalities to zone specifically for rental housing. This was something we'd never been able to do before through the zoning tool. So this would be the first one that goes through under that zone. You'll note that the actual zone is not included because council made some amendments at the last meeting. So there's some minor changes that have been done since then, so it's not included in this package. But the memo describes it in detail. The change that was made by council was that council did not wish to enable subdivision of the land. You know, strata is still on the table and may be considered by the applicant, but outright fee simple subdivision is not an option. With that, I would pass it back to the chair so that we can hear from the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to start, does anybody have any questions or clarifications from Luke from what he has just presented to us?
I do.
Mark, yeah.
In the memo, Luke, it states that since going before council in 2018, the applicant has made the following revisions, and the 4th bullet says subdivision of the proposed development from the parent parcel. So is that contradicting? So council then denied that?
That's correct. So the request was made by the applicant to allow the development area to be severed from the parent parcel So they could have, in theory, different ownership. Council did deny that. So fee simple subdivision won't be associated with this proposal.
Okay, so we're looking at this as 545 Nenzil as an entire package. So the principal residence, and I believe there's two cottages on site. It's kind of a full package then.
Correct.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else? No? Okay, we'll move on then to hear from the applicant, Dean.
All right, thank you. So folks, if it looks like I'm reading my presentation, that's probably because I am. I don't know most of you, so let me introduce myself first of all. My name is Dean Dreger, and this is my first Zoom meeting, so please excuse me if I don't understand all the proper protocols, but I'll do my best. I reside at 545 Nenzil Road, which is the subject property, along with my wife, Marianne, and along with our 88-year-old mother-in-law who lives in her own little 700 square foot cottage, which is what we consider the quintessential little granny suite. I've lived in Qualicum Beach 20 years, and my wife has been here 50 years. I'm also the principal of a little development company called Cottage Lane Developments and a partner, a company called Amplio Development Corp. And for the past 13 years, I have been what I consider the poster child of building and designing some of the more attractive human scale sort of heritage style infill projects in our village core. I've designed and built multiple Vancouver Island Real Estate Board award-winning buildings in our core, and these include a commercial residential mixed-use building, a folk Victorian style rental building with an ultra cool penthouse above, and I bravely at the time sort of mixed rental units with high-end housing units, and I was told I was crazy, but that actually turned out to be a wonderful strategy. And so if there's any doubt in the future of such a project, I can assure you that don't have that sort of don't go down that path. I've built the first row house development in the core. I've followed that up with Rosemary Manor, which is another heritage style multifamily design with a detached laneway home. And again, this is the first of its kind in the core. I consider myself to be a pioneer when it comes to housing ideas. And what's driving my passion these days is the small home movement tied to the pocket neighborhood concept. And so after a decade of sort of hybrid construction and striving to build highly energy efficient buildings, it's now clear to me that the small home movement truly epitomizes sustainable growth while still providing a soul enriching habitat. Small homes are just simply easier to make green as they do not have all that excess room that requires all that additional heat and now cooling as the planet warms. Larger homes equal larger building envelopes, which equals additional air leakage, which is our #1 problem with homes today. Simple, attractive, small, but cleverly designed homes with a construction approach that yields 150-year life expectancy is my definition of sustainable growth and green building. So let's speak specifically to Beach Creek Cottage Court. I'm requesting that I be able to convert my A3 non-ALR zoning to A4, which addresses the rural cluster concept. In addition to my three small homes that currently exist on my property, I would like to build Canada's first Step Code 4 rural rental home cluster. This cluster will be comprised of 6 900 square foot, 1.5 story homes that will still be under 19 feet in height, where the A4 zoning height actually allows for a 30-foot height allowance. By rafter framing the roof, as opposed to using typical industry stick or scissor trusses that seems to be part of our industry, we capture that extra space into conditioned living space, and that just doesn't become unconditioned, mold-prone, usable attic space. This is old technology that I can no longer that I can't wait to see disappear. The homes will be positioned in a pocket neighborhood cluster, and the project design has received high praise from Mr. Ross Chapin, who was the man who designed all the pocket neighborhood projects that were shown in the Rye Road project neighborhood slides at your last meeting. I've been studying Ross's work for years and have attended many of his small home conferences where he has been the keynote speaker, and he never ceases to amaze me. 545 Nenzil Road has some unique features. Our property is located 2.35 kilometers from the downtown core. This equates to a 23-minute walk, 9-minute bike ride along the dedicated Rupert Road paved walking bike trail. With that said, the true uniqueness of our property is its proximity to the walking trails to French Creek. There is a pristine forest off our doorstep that must be seen to be believed. It should also be noted that our project is adjacent to the Pheasant Glen Golf Course CD5 zone parcel to the south. The town of Qualicum Beach's uninhabited ALR properties to the east, my brother-in-law's 5-acre property to the west, and Larry and Vera Khan's 2 A3 non-ALR zoned acreages to the north, one being a 5-acre parcel and the other a recently created 2.5-acre parcel. Because of this unique location, my rental development proposal will not create any additional traffic noise or congestion to any of the 5 property owners that live along Menzel Road. I believe Beach Creek Cottage Court will be Canada's first rental housing proposal that blends affordable housing based on CMHC's affordable housing definition with Step Code 4 net zero ready building technology in a pocket neighborhood design for social connectivity and sense of real community. The design is exactly what I believe the town of Qualicum Beach was hoping to see when addressing the OCP introduction that speaks nearly exclusively for the critical need of more affordable housing options. And that was followed up in the OCP with additional language and policies that could allow for small-scale rural clusters on a few rare A3 non-ALR lots that could convert into A4 zoning. Based on my building and property management experience, I'm also extremely confident that not only could a small cluster of tenants coexist naturally with the surrounding neighborhood and with me as a neighboring landlord, but this unique little cluster will create a small, highly demanded rural community in itself that many experts that I have shown my project to believe is truly groundbreaking. This includes Mr. Ross Chapin, who understands better than anyone that innovative housing solutions start with a passionate builder who is equally supported by a passionate local government. Although my project goals are somewhat daunting, it is my intention to build a rental housing model that could serve as a national rural housing model for small Canadian communities. Beach Creek Cottage Court will address affordability, sustainable green building practices, isolation, and loneliness. This project will be a culmination of my 13 years of award-winning design, hands-on construction experience, and building science training and education. It reflects my personal belief that for housing to be truly successful, it must create real community, personal security, and again, above all, be soul enriching. Concepts that I've come to better understand as Marianne and I navigate through this pandemic. So that ends my portion of the presentation, but I am sure there's going to be questions.
I'm sure there will be. Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Okay, let's start this. We'll do the speaking order. We're going to do in this order at this point, Don, followed by Mark, and then Petronella, Susan, and myself. Again, what I like to do is to ensure that we're asking questions or getting clarifications on the application and not providing our comments about its applicability or suitability. So let's start with Dawn. Do you have any questions or clarifications?
Yeah, when I was reading the original proposal, it says that you're aiming for energy level 4, but for sure can do 3. And I'm wondering what the differences are between the two.
So the way the step code works is every time you move up a number, you get proportionally more, exponentially more energy efficient your building must get. So from 10 to 15 to 20 to 30%. Without truly modeling the drawings, an energy guide expert can't really tell me if I'm at 3 or 4, but most have said because of the small scale size of the building, energy guide or step code 4 should not be a problem. And there's a mechanical component to that too, depending on what sort of mechanical items I bring to the table, HRV, geothermal, these all add to the energy efficient of the building.
So you are doing thermal?
Well, in this case, I don't have to. The building is so small that that geothermal, or not geothermal, air source heat pumps are on the table, but there's actually some new technology that we're looking at right now.
Okay. And when I was also looking at the information package, you had some information about some of the different properties from Dave Ney as to what's out there under 400,000. Is the idea to strata these and sell them, or? Okay.
Sorry, Don, absolutely not. No, that that was an argument I was making earlier in the process, that when it comes to affordable housing, we absolutely have no market housing that's affordable. So that was a snapshot in time that showed what was available under 400,000. Should someone believe they could afford a $400,000 home, did they exist in Qualicum Beach? Not so much.
No.
There was a comparison to what was available in Nanaimo. There was a comparison to what was available in Port Alberni. The inventory was much better. The end result of that was we now sort of needed to look at rental housing as our affordable housing strategy, and that's what sort of springboarded us into the discussion around rental housing. And that's when I wrote the report on what was available in terms of rental housing. And sadly, that was even more dire than the market housing. And so we can talk more about that if you want, but that's how that discussion came about.
Okay. And then my last question is that I thought there was a change in the square footage from.
There was.
Okay.
And again, I built 2 of these cottages already, and for some reason I decided that I was going to make these smaller and less expensive in terms of the rental rate, ignoring what I do best, and that is raising the wall 21 inches and then turning that vaulted ceiling space into conditioned living space. So literally for very little money, a budget of under $10,000, I can almost double the square footage of these homes, which when we showed that to our little peer group, our focus group, they said, you'd be crazy not to do that. And it still brings these houses under 19 feet in height when the allowance is 30 feet. So it does very little to the scale of the building. It just means I don't have these vaulted ceilings now, which I thought were attractive, but we've discovered that more people would be excited by the 330 square feet more of additional remote office space or second bedroom than pretty vaulted ceilings.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Don. Mark.
Just clarifying, Bill, are we okay to ask questions that stretch across land use and design at this time?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay, thanks. Dean, I'm curious, what is the nature of the rentals that you envision here? Are these long-term rentals, short-term rentals, vacation rentals? What are you thinking about here? And accompanying that, what does affordable mean to you in terms of these rentals?
So these are long-term rentals. I have no desire to build short-term rentals, and we can even put that into a covenant. That goes against everything that we've been building and my personal philosophy. What is affordable? Well, I guess we can talk about the CMHC definition of affordability. And according to our OCP, that is the definition we're using. But I believe that we're in a different time now, and we can use the median income, but right now with COVID and the uncertainty of our economic future, I'm not convinced that maybe is the right number to use. I've based my numbers on a number below CMHC's definition of affordability. And at this point, we're looking at rents with all utilities in around $1,300 to $1,350. Now, Mark, if you say, well, you know, how does a single person on minimum wage afford that home? I'm going to say, unfortunately, they don't. But if you say, how do 2 young people with modest incomes afford that home? I say I'm one of the few that offer that type of home. There's also a big component of retirees that are living on fixed incomes that for them, a new home of this quality at $1,300 is unheard of. And you can go to the list of active listings for rental homes in Qualicum Beach, and I defy you to find any that look like this for this, this price range. So I'm pretty adamant that in terms of affordability, we are as good or better than anyone, not to mention all the other things we bring to the table. And sorry, you had a second part of the question.
No, you did answer both. It was whether this was a long-term or short-term rental, and then what was your definition or working definition of affordability. So that was great. Thanks.
Okay.
Next question. So this proposal, it does contradict the current OCP. And you did comment on this in the package that we received from staff. In the OCP, it stated that the town does not support further developments for residential development beyond that which exists in the plan. And there are some other statements in the OCP that support innovative approaches to housing. So we have this dilemma on the table here where we're contradicting one, but we're in line with the others. So I was wondering if you could comment on your approach here of why you think that this proposal does warrant advancement, even though it is in a rural area of the town and contradicts those statements within the OCP.
So yeah, I think this is probably going to become a sort of a very important point to this whole process. And so I prepared something, and I'm gonna read this too, and I hope it answers that question. And so I'm not going to just try and free will this one. I believe that most people will see the clear link between my affordable housing proposal and the airport lands affordable housing proposal, where both properties were outside the urban containment boundary prior to the 2018 OCP. It should be noted that the airport lands are slightly further from the commercial core than my property, but housing at the airport lands still offer a very easy bike ride on an existing dedicated bike path to the core. However, with regards to the airport lands, the town reconfigured I call it the UCB, the urban containment boundary, in 2018 to include this property in order to make their path forward with affordable housing completely in line with the OCP and in clear support of our severe affordable housing shortage, which at 13% or 13.8% to be exact, rental units to total household units is the lowest in BC and likely Canada. Regrettably, the few remaining A3 non-ALR lots that have not been subdivided through building strata and that are likely the only candidates for an A4 conversion were not included in this UCB expansion. Instead, however, new language was added to the OCP, which supports projects like mine. And I can read those, and I suspect you've read them, and it would probably take me a few minutes to go through them all, but there is very poignant language that speaks exactly to what I'm trying to do. I'm going to add two to this, that there was a second competing priority. So this one talks about the priority of affordable housing to 2.11, the urban containment boundary. There was also a second competing priority that outweighed the language of section 2.1.1, which was another town-owned property, that led to the second peripheral property that was at the northwest quadrant of our municipal boundary being brought back into the UCB. This inclusion now allows for increased density on this property, town-owned property, in order to improve this property's resale value, where the proceeds of any sale will then be used for the redevelopment of St. Andrew's Park. In this case, it was recognized that the community's needs for additional recreational opportunities, which improves general quality of life, outweighed again section 2.1.1. So as you can clearly see, the UCB is really not a dam, but rather a floodgate that can be altered to support critical needs for this community as they become evident. The OCP is no longer that static document that it once was. We live in a new world, one with climate change, social awakening around racism, and now pandemics. And as such, the OCP needs to be a dynamic document that is able to react to this new world while still staying true to what we believe is what makes us an amazing community. I believe that's what's happened here. I don't have the luxury of an urban containment boundary extension, but I believe I have fairly strong language that supports still what we're trying to do. So hopefully that answers your question, Mark.
Yes, it does. Just a couple more quick questions, more design oriented. And forgive me if I missed this in the package. I didn't see reference to it. Is there any plan to include EV charging stations on site for these properties?
I thought I was doing great with the community garden. Yeah, again, we haven't investigated that, so I'm not going to say that I have. But if suddenly we discover that, we'll condition for it, we'll conduit for it. If I suddenly have, there's always the slow charge process, and the parking, the way the parking is designed, you can plug your car in there. If you're asking for, do I have a high-speed sort of plug-in concept? No, I don't. Not at this point.
Okay, no worries. That's it for my questions for now. Thanks, Bill.
Great, thank you, Mark. We'll then move on to Petronella.
Yes, I think between Dawn and Mark, a lot of my questions got answered. I am curious when you purchased the land and what the zoning was when you did purchase the land.
Petronella, I believe I bought the land 2004, and the zoning has not changed.
Okay.
Which means I could have gone down the same path as my neighbors and subdivided through a building strata, but that was never on our radar, nor will it ever be on our radar. So, but that zoning, actually that zoning didn't exist initially. I believe the town brought that zoning in for another matter that included all the A3 properties. But yeah, if that's part of your question. Maybe it wasn't.
And the previous projects that you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
all, you said the core, so this is all within the core of Qualicum Beach?
Correct.
And for other projects that you point to by Ross Chapin, are they mostly in more urban settings?
They are wherever Ross manages to find an avant-garde council and potentially APC. They at the very beginning literally are doing what I'm doing, and that is hoping that people see the importance of this type of housing movement. And so he runs the gamut of both rural locations. 3rd Street Cottages is a rural location. They've done some stuff that's urban in the core, but it's sort of a combination similar to what I'm trying to do here.
Okay. And so I have the questions who you are appealing to and the target market. So it would, from your previous comments, appear that you're targeting retirees and young couples and singles. Is that your target market?
Yeah, I think that makes up 72% of our housing at this point. That's or demographic. That market, as you just spoke, two-person households. This is the reality of Qualicum Beach. The majority of that is seniors, but we would like to see a sort of a youth retention design strategy, and I believe this could be part of that. These buildings are certainly not age restricted. I think a blended community would be amazing if we could bring young and old together. I think that would add a real sort of amazing flavor to this small community. I think it's almost imperative that it's a combination of young and old people. And when I mean old, I mean myself.
And the financing of the project, my understanding was if it hinged on being able to subdivide, and now you're not asking to subdivide. So are you still trying to work financing through either BC Housing or CMHC?
So this is not a BC Housing play. BC Housing's got a very sort of unique set of dynamics, and it usually requires a partnership with a municipality and a nonprofit. So, and they do wonderful work. So don't get me wrong there. This ideally would be a CMHC financed initiative.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotten complicated. There's no doubt. They would like to see a cleaner sort of title to this type of development, but I'm tenacious. We think that we can still make a wonderful application to CMHC for this, and I'm still very I'm cautiously positive that without the subdivision, we're still in the running. And unfortunately with CMHC, it's a lottery. And you go up against every other rental project that goes into what they call basically the hopper for that window of opportunity. And it was a 30-day window. It's getting harder now because that window is now changed to 60 days. So they've literally cut in half their financing. And there will be a point where the financing is no longer available. But I don't think we're there yet. And I'd like to think that maybe now with the economic uncertainty, CMHC may see this as almost part of their stimulus bill. And so that this, it helps economically with our local economy. I hire only local trades and sub-trades and buy only local material. And it offers affordable housing, which I think ticks that box, which they're very, it's very important for CMHC's sort of rationale for being in existence. So yeah, that hopefully answers your question.
Okay. And I'm assuming that the rental then would always stay as rental, that it can't be changed from that even if you sold the property.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have a bit of information about rainwater harvesting, and your consultant said they didn't really think that it was worth investing in. But my understanding is you're looking more at gray water.
No, his recommendation was, if you're going to do this as a means of irrigating your plantings, your landscaping, it really doesn't work. And that's basically based on rainfall. When I need it the most, I have it the least. If we were using it for gray water, which would be incredible, but at some point, even my crazy overbuilt strategies need to sort of slow down. And in this case, I wouldn't be able to incorporate that into my units and make them remotely economical to rent, even though I would love to do it. It's a redundancy of plumbing. I basically have to replumb all the gray water with the other system, and so it's just, unfortunately, I can't do that yet. I would love to, but I just can't.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's it for my questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Bettina. Susan.
Hi, Dean.
Hi, Susan.
Hi. I was just wondering about the downsizing to the 570 square feet. I didn't catch the rationale. You had them at 800 square feet and a single level?
No, I originally had them for the first, what went in front of council was one story, 570 square feet with vaulted ceiling.
Oh, okay.
I was able to sort of stack a staircase in the bedroom closet without really losing too much closet space, and converting it was a vaulted ceiling, converting the vaulted ceiling into basically a second story, but we call it 1.5 stories. You're building into the roof line. It's not a full second story with another scissor truss roof on top of that.
Is it just going to be for storage, or?
No. This is amazing. I mean, I have the same exact example in the downtown core, and that's my little Rosebud cottage.
Yes.
It's a little higher balloon framed, but this is the same idea that it's
Okay, I saw that.
it's
Yeah.
instead of it just basically, and it's the same pitch. Just so you guys know, at 812 pitch, it's the same pitch as the former what do we call it? The Chamber of Commerce building, which is one of my favorite buildings in town. So that building with it's in fact the scale. Well, the scale actually our scale is much smaller. That building is 29 feet wide. I'm 23 feet wide. So it gives you an idea. If you think that's a cute, quaint little building,
Yeah.
I'm cuter, quainter than that.
Well,
Mark shaking his head no.
I'm smiling and nodding.
Yeah, well, I think that I don't have any other questions. It seems pretty clear, everything else, with everybody else's questions being answered. So I'll let our chair speak.
Okay, thanks, Susan. Dean, the rainwater management plan, is there one you're taking up a lot of permeable land with which rain will filter into our aqua system. Is there anything that you have planned for this? And if there is, can it be included in your application?
Bill, explain that to me again, because it is permeable land now, sort of.
Okay, well, you're covering quite a bit of it with the building.
Oh, I see.
Is that gravel driveway?
Everything else is gravel. Yeah, everything else is permeable.
Okay. I guess then the question I'll ask Luke later would be if a rainwater management plan would be required for this development. Maybe, Luke, you could answer that now?
Sure. So, yeah, on a parcel this size with such low parcel coverage, it's likely that all the rainwater would naturally infiltrate on site, just given the fact that, even if those driveway portions were paved, it would still be a very low parcel coverage overall.
Okay, good. So a rainwater management plan would not be necessary. Okay. I guess the other question I have is about municipal services. Are you currently on Qualicum Beach Municipal Services Water and Sewage?
I am technically currently on municipal water. This will require an engineered field, which makes life so much easier when you're on municipal water. When I say I'm technically on municipal water, that is, the water is on my doorstep. I just haven't connected.
Okay. So that's the one that's running up along Rupert and up Qualicum Road?
That's the one that crosses an easement through my brother-in-law's property to Pheasant Glen. And there was a...
Oh, that's where the fire hydrant is located on.
That's correct.
Was that it? Okay.
Correct.
So that you'd be bringing your water down from it?
That's correct.
Okay. What about liquid waste?
Liquid waste is now engineered septic field.
It's a septic field. Okay.
Yeah.
And how does that coordinate with or work with the two other properties that are currently there? Is this an independent field?
This will be an independent field, Bill.
Okay. What is the distance of the front yard along Menzel from the property line to the buildings? Just an approximation.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get an idea of what the distance from the, sorry, repeat that, please.
From the property line back to the start of the first of the buildings.
Oh, okay. So you're speaking.
What I'm getting at, Dean, is that there is there's a forest there, right. And the OCP is sensitive to retaining forest, especially in the rural area. Yeah. It also acts as a great buffer and screen from Menzel Road and the rural environment to your densification of property. So what I want to do is to make sure that there is sufficient room to retain what foliage and vegetation and forest is currently there, that is providing that buffer.
Bill, I'd like to do one better. We want to sort of replant a brand new forest on our property. We actually have a lot of area, if you look at Google Map, where we could plant trees. And that area, which is at one point was kind of my construction yard, I hate to say, that disappears and all that area turns into Douglas fir. Unfortunately, we're also losing our cedar as we speak, and we just had 2 cedar trees topped to try and save them, but I'm not sure if that strategy is going to work. So we're going to be losing some of our species, local species, that we plan to replant with a more sort of drought-resistant tree, which might even include a sequoia, which is the redwood that we see in California, Northern California, which I think is our new climate. So specifically how far the edge of that proposal starts to Nensel, I'd have to snap that line on my AutoCAD. I should have that number, but I'm going to say it's about 110 feet.
And so there's ample room then to either retain or replenish, replace a forest that would then provide the rural look along with the buffering.
We're going to be doing the same thing in the front of our property facing Qualicum Road, because the traffic on Qualicum Road is now becoming a little more congested than it used to be. The Island Timberlands area has now become the designated off-leash dog walk park now, which we love. But that combined with the traffic to Pheasant Glen, which obviously will be ramping up over the years, we're going to be putting in, again, more trees in that area just as a screen for our own private property, our principal residence. So that's all part of the master plan.
Included in the package was a landscaping plan, which had planting legend, but it doesn't show Nensel Road and what you're referring to in terms of the new forest.
No, sorry. I provided a bit of a scale drawing with the cluster on the property, sort of that aerial photo, and I'm not sure which.
Yeah, you've got one titled Beach Creek Cottage Court, 545 Nensel Road. Yeah, where it shows the your property in the center of.
Correct. So it's basically a superimposed sort of cut and paste, I hate to say, aerial of Google Map aerial of our property with our cluster on it. So it gives you a sense of scale. I think this is the other important thing. And I think what I probably should have mentioned, and I don't know if it can segue into this, but there's a word that comes up in the OCP a lot, and I think it's important to understand too, and it's compatibility. And this neighborhood is very unique in that it's a bit of an anomaly. I'm adjacent to Pheasant Glen Golf Course, which has been approved for 225 rental tourist accommodation units, clubhouse, restaurant, spa. It goes on. I think there was other amenities mentioned. And I'm also adjacent the A3 lots that have gone down that building strata development strategy, I guess we'll call it. My development is actually on the similar or small size or scale compared to what's surrounding me. And so this is kind of where I sort of think that we have to sort of understand that I'm kind of a unique guy in the sense that I truly believe we can create this in this location. We walk to town. I ride to town all the time. It's part of my riding, my bike ride, but we walk to town all the time too. My wife is in phenomenal shape. And I think that's part of our lifestyle. That's the same feature that we offer. I call them the lucky tenants who get to live here because they have access to the core, and they have access to an amazing trail system off their doorstep. And in the meantime, they've got their own amazing sort of community where hopefully, and we've proven this with Sage Manor, our little unit downtown, that tenants take care of one another, especially during this pandemic where they've been helping each other with groceries. If there were doctor's appointments, There's been offers to drive people. This, I think, is what this speaks to too. And I think it speaks to it even more eloquently because it doesn't force the social connection. It lets it happen. I hate this word, but it does. It happens organically, but it provides you a space to go to that's private at the back of your property if you don't feel like interacting that day. And so I think it's just, I mean, for me, it makes a lot of sense. I just hope I hope other people see that too.
To that end, would you be able to provide a landscape plan that would identify how you're going to reforest both the frontage along Nensel, as well as to ensure the separation on the east and west and north sides of the development from the adjacent property developments?
I'm sure that's possible and easy to do, Bill. I think it's basically look at what is required now for healthy growth, and it literally now is one tree, usually supported with a second tree. They like to compete against each other, which is what creates a healthy tree, planted about every 20 to 30 feet apart. There's the thinning philosophy: you grow a whole bunch and and then just chop down a bunch. But I'm not convinced I like that strategy. But yes, that's certainly not going to be difficult to produce.
Because I certainly agree with where you're going. I think some of the issue that we have with the tree preservation philosophy that's in this town is don't cut down what we've got. My feeling as you is not to so much don't cut it down, but what are you going to replace it with that is going to deal with the climate change that we're going to be facing in the future. The tree canopy that everyone is worried about isn't necessarily that which is existing. It's what we're going to replace with that with. So
correct.
Yeah, and I think what we want to try to do is to ensure that the rural feeling is maintained while you're creating an urban density within it.
That's my exact sort of strategy, and the one thing I think I've been sort of, part of my reputation is I tend to overcommit and overpromise, and then I meet those expectations. And I'm very confident that if we get this opportunity, Qualicum Beach will be the benefactor of this.
It would be great with all that over deliver.
Well, you can't go wrong with that strategy.
It's true. Okay, looking at the design of your units, they look very, with the uniformity of materials and architectural design, it's very barracks-like. Is there anything that you think you could do to remove that sense of ubiquitous? Some facade or some architectural elements, facade articulation, varying of materials and finishes.
So, Bill, I'm going to sort of pull comments from well-respected architects, including Mr. Chapin. This is a model that not so much follows the pocket neighborhood community, which is what it's based on. It's more of a model that follows the bungalow court model, which came out of California in the early 20s, where, and I can show you beautiful examples of this, where the consistent or homogeneous architect design aids the project and doesn't detract from it. And when you start to try and get creative and clever and add interesting features for the sake of features, when you're working with this type of typology, it often fails. But if you stay true or pure to good architecture, it works very well. And one of the comments I hear is, your buildings are very simple, but they're very lovely. And it's often not till the very end that we're finished our construction that people see what we're building. In fact, I was told one time while we were constructing why we were demolishing a building. And I said, we're not demolishing. were building this building and they thought I was tearing down an old building because of the way it looked, that was a big compliment to me because they thought it was a heritage building. I like to think that this is a strategy that makes a lot more sense. And I can assure you that when it's finished, you're going to say, oh, now I get it.
I'm looking at what you had. There was an original application, which I think that concept went to Rye Road, where there was a lot of architectural differencing among the proposed buildings, which I think was the original plan. Was it not that you had last year?
I had this idea that, yeah, we were, and I had a different artist, I'll say,
yes.
who took a lot of liberty, and it was already at that point I had made a huge investment that I thought I can't redraw these drawings. I could never have built what was on that paper that day because it was complicated and expensive. There's an economy of scale when you work with a similar drawing. We're talking about engineering, we're talking about design efficiencies or construction efficiencies, where you literally now can start prefabricating parts of this in a factory setting that then show up. And this is the important thing to remember here, guys. This is how you bring huge value to rental housing through clever design, and to get, you know, to be concerned that maybe this is a little too, to use your phrase, barracks looking. The drawings in this case do the opposite. It doesn't do it justice. The one picture I sent you with a house, a little cottage on Judges Row, which shows what these homes look like in their natural cedar setting, is really what this house will look like. And when you combine a series of those together, it's going to look equally attractive, as long as, and there's a landscaping element to this too, as long as you bring in the correct style of landscaping too. And I think it's not just about trying to bring in all the drought-resistant grasses you can possibly put down. There's foliage and flowers that need to be part of this. And when you combine all of these, parts of the puzzle, that's when you see the real, and again, this kind of sounds hokey, but the magic. And you'll see that in a lot of bungalow courts that are done correctly, and they use the same, it's the same concept design throughout the entire court. So hopefully you have confidence in my ability of doing this sort of, of understanding this of design and sort of a knack for creating detail that really truly works in this sort of environment.
Mike, you stood up to questioning on that very well. The landscaping plan that you show here, then that brings the elements in that you're referring to that would embellish the property and take away from the uniformity of building design? Yeah, I think that's the important blend we have to recognize. Now, some of that will leave. I was trying to get creative with rainwater harvesting for that irrigation. That's not going to happen. So now I have to compromise now, and I have to say, okay, where does the drought resistant go to? And so there's going to be probably a small redraft of the landscaping design just to incorporate some more drought resistant. Okay, so you are going to redraft the landscaping plan for drought resistance.
To a degree. I still don't want to lose all my lovely, my wife would be very upset if we got rid of sort of some of the climbing roses that bring real interesting sort of effect to the separation between the houses. There's going to be a lattice panel that separates the view down those corridors. And it looks much more attractive than just I don't want to just put a fence up there. To me, that makes no sense. This needs to feel alive. This property needs to kind of live and breathe in that sense. So there has to be a lattice system that has a climbing plant on it that creates a unique and it's likely going to be a different color between the houses, a unique dimension again to the homes. So this is what's going to make the houses sort of differentiate from each other. It's the coloring around the houses.
So the landscaping plan that you've shown in your package is basically what you're going to go with, and you're going to embellish it with other elements.
Correct.
Okay, which you're not sure about at this point.
Well, there may be, we may have to lose some plants now to bring some drought resistant into it. Again, that was done previous to getting the call back from our university irrigation, who do most of the rain harvesting design for most municipalities, who broke my heart when he said, "Dean, don't even go down that road. It's just not going to work for you." So now, yes, now we have to sort of revisit the actual landscaping plan, but I don't want to revisit it to the point where what I've created is a permeable xenoscape of just blue chip and reed grass. I mean, it's a great look, but not for this property.
Okay. I noticed adjacent to each of the buildings is a shed. What's the purpose of the shed?
Bill, without that shed, they wouldn't even move there. No, I mean, that sounds facetious. That storage is critical for the golf clubs, for the bicycle, for storing the barbecue and the lawn chairs at the end of the year. And it's the one complaint I get the most often at Rosebud is, why don't I have a shed, and when are you coming to build me one? So yeah, that shed is rather important. And again, I know you're thinking, well, geez, Dean, it just sort of stands out like a sore thumb there, but it's
actually not.
Oh,
I
good.
didn't think that at all. I was more concerned with the proliferation of garbage and recycling containers that we're all about to get. Where are they going to put those on your property, and they not be, as they will be now around town, without proper places to store from site when they're not being out for collection?
Well, I live in
those sheds be large enough to place the containers in there?
Yes. I'm
And
glad you saw
along
that.
with all those other off-season items that you're speaking of.
Yeah, no, we live in the forest. We don't own dogs for a reason. We kind of live with our deer out here, and periodically the odd black bear who likes to, tear down a fence or two. So that's very important that, and I'm, as resident landlord, supervise that. I'm going to be garbage collector on, today is Thursday, but I'll be the guy who literally will be saying, you have to now move your garbage to these, we've got locations for the garbage and recycling. We probably won't use compost because we'll be doing on-site compost, at which point then I will be moving those containers to the street and then returning them later that evening back to where they belong, and then they'll be storing their garbage and recycling in their own receptacles in their storage units, and that will be mandated in our rental bylaws.
Oh, that's good. That's good to hear, because the proliferation of waste containers could be quite ugly to the rural setting. Not that it isn't already on garbage day. On the subdivision, you're not pursuing that, and you're going to keep it all fee simple, and it's just simply going to be rental property.
Yes, I mean, I would like the benefit, whether or not it happens, I don't know. I would like the benefit that I currently have if I want to build luxury homes, and that is to strata title the property to build 6,000-7,000 square foot homes, which I have no desire to do. But I would like to know, I would like to hope to think the town would recognize that what I'm doing is a lot more unique and maybe appropriate for this time on and era on this planet. And if I have the benefit to build multi-mega homes, would I have the opportunity to strata title to create a 6-unit affordable housing complex in a small cluster? That may or may not happen. I think it would be, and the only reason we would request it is, again, for financing purposes. There's no other, I mean, I guess if you forensically look at it and say, well, then maybe you can sell that off. It's like, well, I'm not building this. This is not an investment play like that. This is a long-term process. Otherwise, you'd have dozens of these on your desks, guys. This is a long-term hold investment strategy that literally comes down to financing. And this is why these don't get built. They certainly don't get built to this quality. But I'm a hard guy to convince that it doesn't work if you've done your homework, and I believe I've done my homework.
So to Don's earlier question, this is the proceeding with this application, if council approves it, is not dependent on subdivision then.
Absolutely. Well, no, it's not. I don't want to sound so bold that no, I don't want subdivision. But
well, you could work that out with council.
But if I had it, it would certainly make life easier if they understood the motives behind the request. But I'm afraid the baby got thrown out with the bathwater on that one.
Okay, well, we'll leave that between you and them people.
Yes.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you. Does anyone else have any further questions through the questions that have been asked?
I do actually.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I noticed that you have one of the design features usually in the pocket neighborhoods is that the parking is not tied into each home, but similar to the proposal for 634 Rye Road, it's separate and people walk into the development, into the complex. You've got parking for each unit and then 4 additional parking spots. Can you speak to that? And also, well, I'll ask you that question first.
Okay. Good question, Petronella. We originally corralled the parking, which is not a standard pocket neighborhood concept. If you talk to Mr. Ross Chapin, you'll find that probably most of his developments, and when I say developments, he designs, and a lady called Linda Pruitt from Cottage Developments, that's close. There's another word in there. I'm missing the rest of her cottage name. Usually go with laneway and parking adjacent the housing. And that's because of typically who love these places are retirees. There's young families, don't get me wrong, there's young families, but it takes into consideration, especially on those days when we have, I hate to say it, ice or snow, walking 100 feet to the front door becomes very complicated for some people. Whereas, especially if you're carrying groceries in tow with you, providing parking at the rear of the home where it's still corralled behind the house and the storage unit, which also acts as a buffer for the patio effect, which I really love. That just speaks to our demographic, and that includes me. I given both options, I would much prefer knowing I can just load and unload at my doorstep without still making the cars visible. So that's the answer to that one.
Okay. And you emphasize quite a bit that you think that this kind of pocket neighborhood or cluster neighborhood really does establish a sense of community and helps with, you quote different sources of helping with loneliness and isolation. Do you not think that being as far away as you are from the downtown core, that may well increase loneliness and isolation if if your community is simply based on 5 other people in 5 other houses in the middle of a forest. So I guess my question is, if you are aiming for an older demographic, most people likely aren't going to walk 23 minutes or bike 9 minutes, depending on where in that demographic they fall. Might it not be better to have the services of the town readily available within a 5-minute walking distance?
I disagree, Petronella, and I'll tell you why. We have a rental property on this acreage now, and when it becomes available, and it doesn't become available very often, when it becomes available and I list it, the phone blows up. I literally shut the phone off after 1 day, and I have from that one little window of phone calls, more qualified tenants than you can imagine. These people, this is where life gets interesting. In this rural setting, most of those people tend to be going through some interesting sort of transition. It's either a change of job, a change of, it could be I hate to get personal, but there can be some family matters. And what happens is they love the area. The comment I get though is, and I've shown it to my current tenant, is it's exactly what I would like. In fact, I have tenants now living in Sage Manor who I showed it to, who now my business partner is upset with me because they've asked if they could have first dib on these units. And these ladies are all over the age of 60. So it speaks to them as well as it speaks to our friends who have analyzed this, and we've said the same question. How does this setting work for you if you were to live here? And they love the balance of this setting. In fact, what they love about it is its rural balance. And so I think you will be surprised that this is maybe the formula for housing for rural communities.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else further clarification or comments? I see none. Then let us move on to our individual comments about the application. So let's start with Mark.
Sure. Thanks, Bill. So, Dean, thanks for taking the time today, obviously, to share your insights and vision for the project. I really like it. So while I'm sure the project will pay off, for you financially, I also think this is a values-driven project that will pay off for the town. In a recent meeting, we worked through a proposal that had some similar contradictions to the OCP, but from my perspective, it was coming from a different viewpoint. It would provide similar housing that's available elsewhere in town, similar style neighborhoods. And at that time, I opposed that development. I thought it contradicted the OCP and didn't bring the value that the town may need to make some decisions about what the OCP has and has not. For me, this proposal is different fundamentally. It's small scale, it's community oriented, it's rental focused, and it's energy efficient in its design. And so those check a lot of boxes, I think, from me personally, but also I think from the town's perspective. This is the kind of thing that we're looking to introduce to the town. In the agenda package, we saw a comparison to a similar adjacent property where the lot was split and two very, very large houses were developed on that property. And so I guess the question that I came back to was, would we rather these two mega homes or a collection of small scale rental properties? And to me, it's a no-brainer. My vote would be these rental properties. It's less of a footprint, less ostentatious. I think it's increases opportunities for people to live and work within the boundaries of Qualicum. So I don't feel hypocritical in supporting this proposal and its contradictions to the OCP. I really like how this is framed and approached, and I think, Dean, you've come at this from a holistic perspective that I think would reward the town. Thanks.
Mark, just a question to you. Is there anything that you would like to see added to this in terms of recommending this, not only the amendment, but also in terms of the design of the property? Is there anything you would like to add to our decision that would impact or be implemented into the final design that goes to council?
I would, yeah, thanks, Bill. It's good, good prompt. Dean mentioned his willingness to put that these would be long-term rentals as a covenant. So I think it would make sense to include that in our recommendations to council, that these units are designed and developed and delivered as rental units.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Thanks.
We'll go to Petronella.
Well, I really tough time with this one because similar to Mark, I really do like the proposal. I am familiar with Ross Chapin and pocket neighborhoods and not so big house design, and I agree with the philosophy of that. And I think that your integrity will see the project through, that what you've shown to us, and that you are a responsible citizen of Qualicum Beach. And that the town would benefit from the 6 rental units. I still, though, have a struggle with going against the principles of the OCP. And as Mark mentioned, there was another project or proposal that also was not in the urban containment boundary, and we're asking to have changes made. And I really have a problem with the OCP being taken so lightly, and people saying we have to be flexible, and it's a difficult choice, I think, for me and a lot of other people. Housing has become the major concern of council, and there are other concerns that are included in the OCP, which are also very important. And a great deal of time and effort and money went into the current OCP. And so it does reflect what the residents of the town have said they value and they want. And my recommendation would be, I think it's a great project, but I just think it's in the wrong place. That Qualicum itself, the town of Qualicum Beach, is trying to address issues of managing growth, keeping our small town village character, which is reflected in this project. But I guess I'm just still undecided about it, but I don't know if there's anything that we can do, because it does seem to be setting a precedent that the OCP can just be flopped around without any serious concern. And I don't know that there's any recommendations that we can make in that regard. So I really like the project. I really believe in a lot of agree with a lot of the design points. I agree with the social aspects of it, but I do have strong concerns about not taking the OCP seriously and it not being in the urban containment boundary. Thank you.
Thank you, Petronella. Susan.
Well, like Petronella and Mike Mark, I'm in agreement that this is a project that is really going to be welcomed. I was one of the people that phoned Dean for a rental, and I know that how difficult it is to find a place like this to, you know, rest within a small community of people that actually might care for one another. So the location of it, as far as it goes, I'm of the flavor that I think that it's a lot of property for two people to be residing on, and Dean's willing to stick his neck out again to create something that is unique. I'm really kind of in favor of any time that we can accommodate the need. Even me putting my parents into an apartment recently, you know, something like this would have been lovely as a stepping stone into the next step. So I would really appreciate if this was available and more projects like it. And yes, the OCP, I'm not sure how far, you know, the containment area where that line would be drawn, but we don't have a lot of land within the community that would accommodate a project like this. So, you know, what do we, you know, for me, it's a yes, absolutely consider this.
Thank you, Susan. Dawn.
Well, I agree with everybody, and I like in the sense that I think it's good for the community. I don't, you know, Petronella, I think it's really difficult to draw hard lines on official community plans, that not every piece of land can be taken into consideration when everyone's putting their thoughts together. And I love this little village and I like it the way it is. And I don't want to see monstrosities go up and ugly buildings and take away the flavor that we have. And I don't think it's really that far out of town to have rentals. I mean, even scooters, you see people from Dashwood riding their little scooters in. And that's a lot longer from where this property is. And with the development at Pheasant Glen, it's kind of going to fit in there. Yeah, and the sense of community, like, you know, it might seem like a little small, like people might get a little more isolated, but owning a property up in Bowser that has 13 RV sites on it, and how much those people have come together to help each other, it doesn't take a lot of people to make a little community. And within a community, to have them be there for each other. And it's made a big difference for all of them. And then there's one person that's really sick up there, and they've all pulled together to make sure that this person's looked after. And they're all seniors. And so I vote yes for the project. Yes, it's not within the OCP, but I think we have to have some flexibility with what it has to say for outline. But at the same time, I don't feel that we're flopping it around. I just think that we just can't have every piece of property taken into account when you're putting out an OCP plan that's basically trying to cover everything, when really not everything falls under the same blanket.
Thank you. I guess it's my turn. This town is always going to have a problem when you have an official community plan that is both visionary and prescriptive. It has a built-in dichotomy that takes the visionary aspect and the flexibility of guidelines and forcing it into a set of rules that are unchangeable. It is what it is. We have it. We have to live with it. Hopefully, in the next iterations, will become a little more visionary and less prescriptive. But right now we'll deal with it. So I do share the concerns that Petronella has mentioned, but I think we have to look at outside of the box, and there's all, as I say, there's a dichotomy. And although this doesn't align with the OCP's vision to restrict urban densities outside its defined urban containment boundaries and into what is here the rural zones, it does meet many of the objectives and policies that relate to maintaining the forest greenways, the clustering of developments within the rural area, adequate buffering to the adjacent ALR lands. These are not ALR, but they do abut. And as we heard Dean say, he wants to not only retain what he can of the existing forest, but embellish it. Also, a big portion of the OCP is directed to creating accessible living, housing. They call for innovative approach to housing, both in form and accessibility to affordable opportunities through rental. So I believe that this application is compatible with the residential nature of the rural area and development and its adjacent uses. And it really has no effect on neighborhood amenities or the impact on the environment. And I think it adds a critical addition to our need of affordable housing. And I applaud Dean for his efforts in following this through, and hopefully other properties will follow under this A4 designation. So any other comments from comments made by other people? We'll start with Petronella. Anything?
You want me to comment on?
Yeah, if there's anything you wanted to add to what other people have said, either in defense of or contrary to.
Well, like I said, I've had a real struggle with this, and I guess one of my concerns is that we seem to be setting precedents. This may be setting a precedent in the right direction, but there also are some that have set precedents in what I consider the wrong direction. But, you know, I'm in agreement with the others of the APC that I really like the project, and I think it does have a lot of positives. So there's no question of that. It's just my concern with there are other aspects of the town that need to be respected and addressed. And I don't know if changing or having the OCP be what I consider disrespected in some cases. I don't know that that's a good idea, but I really like this project. I always have been in favor of smaller houses. It has a lot of the things that I really resonate with me. And so those are just my concerns. And I don't know that we can resolve it other than say yay or nay for this particular project. I don't think we can do anything other than that.
Yeah, there's no demilitarized zone in the OCP between what is written and any changes. Is there anything that you would like to add to the recommendations considering the design?
The only thing that I would kind of comment on is in a lot of the pocket neighborhood projects that I'm familiar with, there's a bit more of a gradual going from public space to semi-private or semi-public space to private space. And this, it's pretty much right there. Like there's the walkway and then the veranda. There's not a lot of space between the green space and the building. But other than that, I can't think of anything.
So you, just how would you like to see that occur? You say there you want the semi-private, which would be the porches facing into the common green, and then there's the private amenity spaces at the rear. How would you want to see that be improved?
Well, I guess a lot of the projects that I've seen, the interaction, the social interaction happens on the front porch.
Mm-hmm.
So if there were, rather than the walkway going right in front of the houses, fairly close in front of the houses, maybe if the walkway was a little more
so sort of a center walkway, which then
had
gives
more space between the walkway and the house.
Okay.
Then that might
to create a more common public space in front of the private, semi-private places. Okay, I think that's, I got that. Okay, thank you.
That's about it for me.
Okay, Susan, was there anything that you would like to see added in support of the design?
Well, I think that was one of the things that Petronelli was saying, is the community hub is really for that to be in, you know.
Okay.
I was wondering whether it was going to be in that other area adjacent or on the other side of the visitor parking there. That seems to be a free space there, and perhaps that would be the meeting place and have that courtyard walk through just as it is. So I didn't, but it wasn't that big of a deal. People will figure it out, okay. I think.
Dawn, did you have anything that you would like to add to
I
recommendation?
have a thought, and it's just a thought. You know, in lieu of having a rain management collection plan, like even something as simple as like some of the rain barrels I've been seeing lately from people that I'm out showing property to, they're pretty unique in the way they're set up and the way, and then how much they actually hold. That it could be kind of an interesting way of looking at doing some things like that. That would maybe be my only thought. But otherwise, I like the project.
Okay. Mark?
Nothing further from my side, thanks.
Okay, good. Then what I'm going to do is give you an outline for motions. I think, again, we'd like to do two motions, one for the land use zoning amendment and the other in terms of our feelings about the design of the project. So I think I'd throw out this as a motion that the APC supports the zoning amendment application for Rural 3A3 to Rural 4A4 for 545 Nensel Road. So now there was a request or a statement in our package that asked for a pre-development covenant to ensure adequate buffer screening and setback to the adjacent ALR lands. So I think it might be proper to include that in the support of this amendment. So for discussion, I would need to have someone move this and second it. Who can I have as a mover?
I'll move it.
Oh, move, Mark, and second?
Susan?
Okay, so Don waving up there. So thanks, Susan. Okay, any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any? Hearing none, motion is carried. Okay. So the second motion would be, again, just throwing out a rough draft for you, that the APC supports the design of the project and recommends consideration to incorporating the following in the final design. That a landscape plan for the forestation along the Nensel Road frontage and along the interior and side, the setbacks separating the other development. I think in the discussion I had with Dean, he talked about his desire to ensure that the forest is not only maintained or retained, but is actually embellished. So I'd like to see a landscape plan in terms of how he would do that. To Mark's point about somehow ensuring that these are long-term rental units, not to be turned out as short-term or VRBO or what have you. The other, and I think it's a good one, is to bring that central area between the two buildings and create a more public community center. So I'm not sure how that can be done, but I think that is an important element to bring the sense of community, the sense of oneness, and what Dean was trying to do is if there are individuals that are suffering loneliness or lack of interaction, social interaction, this would become a gathering spot. So those would be what I heard. Is there anything that we would want to add to that or change? Hearing and seeing none.
Just a second.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Petra.
We had talked about electric car chargers.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to, can you remember, Mark, what the response to that was?
Yes, Dean mentioned that they haven't explored including high efficiency charging stations. At this point, the kind of trickle charge would be an option based on the positioning of the parking spaces. To my eye, that was a sufficient response, that it would be possible, at least with the kind of the easy charge setup. I wouldn't mind seeing something, explored and possibly built in, but I wouldn't want to enforce it from what I'm seeing. But if you'd like to entertain that, Petronella, feel free.
No, I'm fine.
Do you want? Then there's not an agreement to put that in.
Pardon me?
I'm just looking at the group. Is there a sense that element to incorporate EV charging stations as something for them to look at in the final design? Am I seeing any? I don't see any head shaking. Yes or no? Okay, we'll take
I'd like to see it explored, and if it's feasible and makes sense to be included, but I wouldn't want to mandate it.
Okay, let's just say explore opportunity.
Okay.
To include EV charging stations. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else that? See none. Bernadette, do you need some help with with the motion if we ask you to read it back?
Well, I am in training, and Rebecca has done a great job at pulling together.
How about Rebecca? So, Rebecca's really good at this. I mean, I can read what I've got, and I can provide Rebecca with an email that incorporates this for her assistance.
That would be
she's actually really good at listening to the recording. So
yes, well, yes. If you could read what you have.
Yes. Okay.
To us, that would be
that the APC supports the design of the project and recommends consideration to incorporating the following in the final design: a landscape plan for the reforestation of Nensel Road frontage and along the interior setback separating the other developments on the property. Indication that that these are long-term rental units only, and that short-term or VRBO type rental won't take place. That the center public area be redeveloped or reconfigured to give it more of a community gathering sense and opportunity, and also to explore opportunities in adding EV charging stations.
Sounds great.
Does that kind of go with what everybody was thinking? Okay, then I'll ask for someone to move that.
Dawn will.
Okay, Dawn will. Who's going to second it? I see Susan.
Yeah.
Okay, Dawn moves, seconded by any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Opposed, if any? Carried. Well, thank you all for what was a great session. I think we're getting really, we're really getting good at this, especially over Zoom. So thank you again, and best wishes to Dean in his.
Well, and if I could just say one thing before everyone goes, I think it really helped that Dean was really prepared, and he knew his stuff, and he knew what he had, like, wanted to convey to us in a way that, you know, made sense to everybody. Yeah. So I think that says a lot about how he's going to probably do this project.
I think so.
And I don't even know Dean, so I can't say. I'm just
okay.
Trying to.
I have to say I was a little concerned with the material that we had, that it dwelt so much on proving that rental properties were required. And thank you, Dean, for not going into that.
You're welcome.
Well, if that is it, then I will call the meeting. Oh, I need a motion to adjourn. Sorry.
Adjourn.
Nella, thank you. Seconded by Mark. I see Mark. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Carried. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you at our next virtual meeting.